Welcome to Easy English. Let's improve your English. Here we learn through stories, slowly, clearly, and concisely. Listen and enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Introduction. The morning began like so many others, quiet and calm across much of the globe. People were starting their usual routines, heading to work or making their way to school. In most places, the sky was clear and blue, though in some areas, clouds painted it shades of gray. Birds chirped in the background, blending with the hum of cars passing by. Everything seemed ordinary, just as it had the day before. But this tranquility didn't last. Without warning, alarming news broke, taking everyone by surprise. It was unsettling news that arrived from a distant region unfamiliar to many, the Middle East. The news centered around two countries, Israel and Iran, nations that had long-standing conflicts and strained relationships. Their mutual tensions, deep-seated feelings of hostility and disagreement, weren't new. However, on this particular day, those tensions escalated dramatically, reaching levels previously unseen. Suddenly, the situation between these two countries turned critical, meaning it reached a dangerous tipping point where significant consequences seemed inevitable. Indeed, reports indicated something major had already taken place. What were once persistent but manageable problems had now transformed into a dangerous new crisis. As news of these events traveled, anxiety spread around the globe. People everywhere paused their daily activities to follow the updates, discussing the unfolding developments with concern. What exactly caused their worry? Primarily, the fear was that this conflict, essentially a severe disagreement or confrontation, might expand beyond just two countries, dragging many others into a broader, perhaps devastating war. People became nervous, unsure of what the future held. Would things deteriorate further? Would more nations become involved? These critical questions loomed in everyone's minds. This story will take a closer look at these pivotal moments. It will detail precisely what happened between Israel and Iran that day, outlining the steps each side took and investigating the underlying reasons for these dramatic events. Furthermore, it will explore the broader impacts of the conflict, examining how these incidents affected not only the people of Israel and Iran but also other countries worldwide. The narrative will delve into how peace and stability in the Middle East, and indeed around the entire world, were influenced by these events. Ultimately, it's a story about a crucial moment when everyone collectively held their breath, awaiting what might happen next. The attack begins. News of a major military strike spread rapidly. Israel had launched an attack on Iran early Friday morning. Reports swiftly emerged indicating that the targets were critical facilities within Iran, primarily related to its nuclear activities. Sites associated with missile development were also strategically targeted. At Natanz, one of Iran's key nuclear enrichment plants, eyewitnesses reported seeing thick black smoke billowing into the sky, marking it clearly as one of the significant attack points. Additionally, Israel carried out strikes against multiple radar installations and surface-to-air missile launchers positioned across western Iran. These particular installations are crucial for protecting a country's airspace against enemy aircraft. Observers described the assault as large-scale and significant, possibly the most impactful military strike Iran had faced since the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. Amidst the unfolding news, there was troubling information about key Iranian military figures. Among them was the head of Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard. Iranian state television reported that a high-ranking general named Hassan Salami, who led the Revolutionary Guard, was killed in the attack. Another prominent figure, General Mohammad Bagheri, who served as the chief of staff for Iran's entire armed forces, was also confirmed dead by official Iranian media. Additional reports soon emerged confirming the deaths of several other senior military officers and scientists due to the strikes. The Israeli military had employed an exceptionally large number of aircraft in this extensive operation, involving roughly 200 planes. These aircraft targeted around 100 strategically important locations throughout Iran. Israel utilized sophisticated and advanced methods during this offensive. Prior to launching the attack, small unmanned aerial vehicles, known as explosive drones, had been covertly placed inside Iranian territory. These drones specifically targeted missile launchers at an Iranian base near Tehran, the capital city. Moreover, Israel deployed specialized precision-guided weaponry hidden on vehicles within central Iran. At the exact moment the main assault began, these concealed weapons were activated to disrupt Iran's air defense systems. Executing this operation required detailed planning, significant resources, and coordination among a large fleet of aircraft. The complexity and scope of the operation became increasingly apparent as additional details emerged. It clearly demonstrated the use of diverse military tactics aimed at simultaneously hitting multiple critical targets. The Israeli Air Force had to push their aircraft to their operational limits in order to effectively reach and destroy the intended targets. Initially, there was uncertainty about whether Israeli planes had entered Iranian airspace directly or launched missiles from positions beyond Iran's borders. People living in Iraq reported hearing the sound of fighter jets overhead around the time of the strikes, and historically Israel had previously conducted operations against Iran from across the Iraqi border. This particular attack emphasized the severity of the conflict, given the strategic importance of the Iranian military and nuclear facilities targeted. News of this significant and comprehensive attack quickly spread internationally. Iran's rapid response. Following the attack on its territory, Iran swiftly decided to retaliate. The response was immediate and involved launching a large swarm of drones, remotely piloted aircraft designed to carry out targeted attacks. According to reports, Iran deployed more than 100 drones simultaneously, an aggressive strategy intended to overwhelm defenses. These drones set off towards Israel, covering significant distances and crossing through the airspace of countries located between Israel and Iran. Residents in these neighboring nations observed the drones passing overhead. Official announcements from Iraq and Jordan confirmed the presence of these Iranian drones in their skies. Naturally, seeing foreign military equipment crossing their territory sparked anxiety and alarm among people in these countries. Anticipating a possible retaliation from Iran, Israel had already prepared extensive defensive measures. It operates sophisticated air defense systems, designed specifically to detect and intercept incoming threats such as rockets or drones. As the swarm of Iranian drones approached, Israel's defensive mechanisms activated promptly. Radar systems tracked the drones' positions, allowing interception efforts to commence immediately. Later, the Israeli military publicly announced the successful engagement and destruction of the incoming drones. They reported that all interceptions occurred before the drones penetrated Israeli airspace, meaning the threat was neutralized before it reached Israeli territory or endangered civilians. Initially, however, there was uncertainty about whether every drone had been intercepted. Observers awaited further updates and clarification on this critical point. In response to the escalating crisis, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's highest-ranking leader, made a strong public statement addressing Israel's assault. He used forceful language to convey his position on the situation. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei condemned Israel's actions forcefully, describing them as an immoral act and a severe crime against Iran. He emphasized that Iran would not remain quiet or passive following such aggression. He vowed a powerful response to Israel's strikes, explicitly referring to it as severe punishment, highlighting Iran's anger and determination to retaliate strongly. Iran's rapid drone response demonstrated clearly that the conflict was escalating significantly. With direct attacks exchanged, the confrontation between Israel and Iran had become markedly more dangerous. This increased the instability in the Middle East, drawing heightened global attention. Nations worldwide closely monitored developments, deeply concerned about potential consequences. Anxiety was growing as the situation appeared increasingly unpredictable and risky for the broader region. Reasons for the attack. Israeli officials explained their motives behind the strikes, describing the action as urgently necessary. They justified the attack by emphasizing the imminent threat posed by Iran's nuclear program. According to their assessment, Iran was nearing the capability to build nuclear weapons, a prospect that greatly alarmed Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu was particularly direct about the threat. He insisted that Iran's nuclear ambitions were not peaceful, labeling them a direct threat to Israel's existence. For him, decisive action was essential now to prevent future catastrophe. From his perspective, failing to act immediately could lead to devastating consequences. Concerns about Iran's nuclear activities had been steadily rising over many years, intensifying anxieties internationally. Reports from global monitoring agencies confirmed Iran was advancing its uranium enrichment capabilities rapidly, employing sophisticated technology to accelerate this process. This progress increased fears in countries like Israel, heightening the urgency for preventative action. Historical context also significantly influenced Israel's decision-making. In the past, Israel had repeatedly intervened militarily against what it perceived as Iranian threats, targeting military installations and missile sites. These earlier actions highlighted Israel's long-term distrust of Iran's ambitions and strength. Now, Israeli leaders felt the threat had escalated to an unprecedented critical level, making further delay dangerously imprudent. In contrast, Iran maintained its stance firmly, asserting that its nuclear program was entirely peaceful. Iranian officials consistently argued their nuclear activities aimed solely at producing electricity and medical research purposes, insisting that they were in compliance with international guidelines. They strongly denied allegations of attempting to develop nuclear weapons. However, Israel categorically rejected Iran's claims, convinced that Iran was concealing its true objectives. Observing Iran's rapid advancements in uranium enrichment, Israeli leaders believed the threat was genuine and imminent. This fundamental disagreement formed a central motivation behind the attack. Israel felt compelled to act decisively to safeguard its future, viewing the attack as a critical step to prevent Iran from achieving nuclear weapons capability. Ultimately, the perceived immediacy of the threat justified their timing for action. Global reaction. As news of Israel's strikes quickly spread worldwide, countries throughout the Middle East expressed immediate disapproval, condemning the Israeli operation as inappropriate. Leaders around the globe became increasingly worried, urgently appealing for calm. They called on both Israel and Iran to de-escalate and sought to prevent further deterioration of the situation, hoping to avoid a wider conflict. The United States also issued a statement regarding the attack, clarifying that they were not directly involved but were aware of Israel's intentions beforehand. American officials had previously advised Israel against launching such an attack during discussions about Iran's nuclear activities. At the time, the President of the United States was Donald Trump. At that time, Trump's administration clarified they had prior knowledge of the operation but weren't directly involved. Secretary of State Marco Rubio publicly emphasized that Israel independently chose to carry out these strikes. He explained that Israel viewed its actions as necessary self-defense, essential for protecting its own security. The U.S. government's primary concern during this crisis was safeguarding American citizens and military personnel stationed in the region. Even before the attacks occurred, the United States had taken cautious measures reflecting their concerns. For instance, they relocated some diplomats away from certain cities in Iraq. They also offered families of American service members based in the Middle East the option to leave, if they preferred. Once the strikes began, the U.S. Embassy in Israel instructed government employees and their families to remain sheltered until receiving new instructions. President Trump quickly convened a meeting with his top national security advisors to review the rapidly evolving situation. During this session with the National Security Council, the group carefully discussed the developments and considered their next moves. Meanwhile, the international community watched anxiously, hoping the conflict would swiftly end and peace could resume. Impact on people. These recent developments profoundly affected everyday life for countless individuals. Many Israeli citizens felt increasingly anxious, anticipating further violence. Driven by fear and uncertainty, residents began swiftly stocking essential supplies. Supermarkets became crowded as people bought bottled water and non-perishable foods to ensure their households were well prepared. People also frequently communicated via phone messages, exchanging practical advice about safety preparations. Friends and families reminded one another to check their bomb shelters, safe, secure spaces often located underground beneath homes. They carefully inspected and stocked these shelters with vital supplies, reflecting how drastically the threat of violence had shifted their everyday routines and made security a top priority. In Iran, the nation's leaders addressed the public directly about the Israeli attacks, labeling them criminal acts. The country's top leader, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, spoke out decisively, vowing that Iran would respond strongly. His statements likely sparked diverse reactions among Iranians. While some citizens may have felt anger and supported retaliation, others likely worried deeply about the implications of further conflict for their family's safety. Regardless, the leader's message was unmistakably clear: Iran intended to react forcefully. Throughout the region, civilians faced mounting fears of ongoing violence. Citizens in both Israel and Iran lived under the shadow of potential escalation, but anxiety wasn't limited to these two countries alone. Neighboring nations closely monitored the unfolding crisis, concerned it might spread and destabilize the wider region. The possibility of a broader war deeply worried countless people, who hoped fervently for a peaceful resolution. The conflict also disrupted daily routines in significant, tangible ways. For instance, Israel's primary international airport, an important transportation hub serving thousands daily, was temporarily shut down. As flights were halted, travel plans for work, holidays, and family visits were suddenly disrupted, vividly demonstrating how quickly a military crisis could halt ordinary life. The repercussions extended internationally, affecting foreign nationals as well. The United States, for example, urged its staff and their families in Israel to stay in secure locations, even offering evacuation options to those feeling unsafe. Such measures underscored the widespread anxiety gripping many individuals. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the Iranian public directly in a notable message. He stated clearly that Israel's dispute was with Iran's government, which he described as an oppressive dictatorship, not its people. Netanyahu expressed hope that someday the Iranian people would experience freedom. His message aimed at differentiating the Iranian citizens from their government, showing how leaders recognize the deeply human impact of these events even on opposing sides. Overall, the unfolding crisis left deep and widespread emotional and practical impacts on countless individuals throughout the region and across the globe. Nuclear concerns. Following these troubling events, global attention increasingly focused on Iran's nuclear activities. A crucial international organization, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, is tasked with monitoring nuclear programs worldwide. Recently, this agency confirmed something significant. After the Israeli strikes, attention quickly focused on one particular target: the nuclear enrichment facility at Natanz in Iran. Natanz is a site where Iran processes nuclear materials, primarily to produce fuel for power generation. However, this enriched material also has the potential to be used in nuclear weapons. Immediately after the attack, reports indicated thick black smoke rising from the Natanz complex. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IA, swiftly increased their surveillance of the site. They began carefully measuring radiation levels to determine if the attack had caused any dangerous leaks or contamination. This kind of monitoring is crucial because it ensures nuclear materials remain safely handled, especially after any violent incident. Many people around the world began asking a critical question: how close is Iran to developing nuclear weapons? Opinions differ significantly on this complex issue, and there's no straightforward answer. Israeli leaders are convinced that Iran poses a substantial threat, insisting that it is nearing the capability to build nuclear weapons. To Israel, this scenario represents a grave risk to its security. However, intelligence agencies in the United States, whose role involves gathering detailed information about other countries, hold a different perspective. These agencies currently believe Iran doesn't have an active nuclear weapons program and isn't actively planning to build such weapons right now. They estimate that even if Iran did decide to pursue nuclear weapons, it would require several months of work, including testing, to create a usable nuclear device. Iran itself continues to firmly assert that its nuclear activities are exclusively peaceful. Iranian officials repeatedly state their objective is solely civilian nuclear power, aiming to produce electricity for their nation, not nuclear weapons. Nevertheless, the IAEA recently expressed dissatisfaction with Iran, criticizing the country for not fully cooperating with their inspectors in some areas. Following this criticism, Iran responded by making new announcements regarding its nuclear program. Iranian officials declared intentions to expand their nuclear activities significantly. They revealed plans to increase their production of enriched uranium, a material capable of fueling nuclear reactors or, at higher enrichment levels, potentially weaponized. Additionally, Iran announced they would construct a new enrichment facility and employ more advanced centrifuges, machines capable of enriching uranium more efficiently. These announcements intensified global worries about Iran's ultimate nuclear ambitions. Thus, Israel's attack refocused international attention on Iran's nuclear program, reigniting global concerns over how close Iran might be to developing nuclear weapons. Many countries anxiously await developments, aware of the significant implications this issue holds for regional peace and stability. The nuclear question remains central to the broader geopolitical situation. The path forward. The recent attacks triggered immediate and noticeable consequences worldwide. The global economy felt rapid repercussions. Most notably, oil prices surged almost 8% shortly after news broke. This sharp increase meant higher costs affecting consumers and economies globally. Additionally, travel was significantly disrupted. Israel's main international airport temporarily closed, halting flights and stranding passengers. This sudden disruption underscored the broad and immediate consequences of military conflicts, extending beyond the region directly involved. Political leaders worldwide expressed deep concern, emphasizing the urgency of containing the conflict between Israel and Iran. They understood clearly that if the confrontation escalated into a wider war, it could create severe problems affecting not only the Middle East but the entire international community. Driven by these fears, leaders quickly called for restraint, urging both Israel and Iran to halt further aggression and reduce tensions immediately. International organizations and governments actively explored ways to prevent additional violence. Their efforts aimed at finding solutions that could ensure safety for everyone involved. They knew continued fighting would cause widespread harm to innocent civilians and lead to prolonged regional instability. These dramatic events also prompted serious reflection about the long-term outlook for peace in the Middle East. The region's stability remains precarious, often vulnerable to rapid escalations from simple disagreements to outright conflict. Keeping the peace and ensuring security in a place with long-standing historical tensions and complex rivalries is an immense challenge. The future path for the Middle East thus appears uncertain, filled with potential risks and significant challenges. The current situation served as a stark reminder of how quickly peace can be disrupted and security compromised. Leaders must act cautiously, making careful decisions to avoid further conflict, instead prioritizing diplomacy and dialogue. They must carefully consider the welfare of ordinary people and the long-term stability of their countries and neighbors. Globally, observers hoped fervently for a peaceful resolution. The recent crisis was a powerful reminder of the profound dangers inherent in conflicts and the critical need for negotiation, mutual understanding, and peaceful resolutions instead of relying on military force and violence. These events highlighted just how difficult it is to find a lasting path toward peace in a volatile international environment.